I think I'm fine. Yeah, I mentioned the job stuff a couple of times. I don't want to hit on it too hard.
Yeah.
Being like, please give me a job.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's exactly where I'm at. I'm like, please just give me money.
yeah.
So, Jason, who the hell are
Hey,
you?
who the hell am I? Great question.
Thanks.
I ask
Thanks.
this question every day. So I'm Jason Bejot. I describe myself as a technologist rather than a designer. I've been doing design for it feels like 1,000 years. Most recently at Rocket Mortgage, but now I am a free agent looking for that next gig. I'm not going to define myself by where I work, just more of just how I think, how I operate. So, yeah, that's a little bit about who I am.
Okay. Well, welcome and thanks for being the inaugural guest.
Well,
Watch
thank
as
you
I
for having
put your episode as number two, because
me.
I'll forget that I said inaugural and also can't say inaugural very
Ooh, yeah.
easily. So, like I said, I have a couple questions, but we can go wherever it goes. One is, and this is one thing I want to ask everybody, is like, how did you start? Like,
Um,
where you're at now, how did you begin? And because everybody's story is like kind of similar, but also some people just are like, well, I was out on the fishing boat one day, and it's like, wait, what? So,
yeah. Caught this whopper of a whale.
yeah.
No, actually, I think I have a slightly different origin story into my career than most folks. So I didn't come from the world of design. I didn't go to like design school or anything like that. I went to school for computer science. So trained as a computer scientist, as an engineer, and that's what I did. Not out of grad school, but out of undergrad. Just went straight into doing engineering, full stack engineering, for a web shop. This was back in 2005, back in the olden times. And yeah, I did that for a number of years. One thing that was different between myself and like the different people in my class at the time was there was an HCI research fellow who joined the university. And so he and I
Mm.
kind of kicked it off, and he had asked me to help him set up his HCI research lab. So that's what I did for like the last couple of years while I was at school. So we worked together, trying to figure out this whole HCI thing. And that's where I started like learn like the importance of like good design and how people interact with technology, and kind of the psychology behind it too a little bit. So that's sort of like the seed of it. As like after school and as I was in the working force, I was at this agency doing Flash engineering, getting super deep into like ActionScript, like making the engines and physics engines and crazy shit like that. One day the agency was like, hey, we want to start doing UX because UX is like the next hot thing. And we don't have anyone who can do this. And this was back in Omaha, Nebraska, where there were like UX was like, what are you talking about? What is this thing?
Mm.
Um, and so they're like, hey, Jason, we know you can do this. Do you want to start doing it for us? So I was like, sweet, yeah, absolutely. I kind of wanted to get out of engineering anyways. So that was sort of like my door. So literally one day I was an engineer. The next day I came in, I was their UX designer, setting up their practice, doing UX design, trying to figure it out, and started doing that. Did that at the company for a couple of years, and that's sort of like the origin of how I got
Mm.
into the whole design career.
What are some of the ways you tried to figure it out?
Ooh,
Because
um,
it sounds the setup is there's nobody at the company who can mentor you or anything like that.
yeah.
So it's deep end first day.
It that is a it's really digging into the history. Yeah, what are some of the ways I try to figure it out? So I really cut my teeth on like doing wireframes. Like that was really
Mhm.
kind of where I started. Was like, okay, like there were some graphic designers and a bunch of engineers, and so I was kind of like at that bridge between the two of like, hey, the designers want to go make this thing look like this. Engineers want to go make a thing that does this, but they don't compute. They don't mix together. So I was in the middle trying to figure out like what's going to be like that right solution between the two. And the majority of what I did was just create a bunch of wireframes and like really basic like paper prototypes at the time to figure out what's
Mhm.
what's going to be like that right thing. So it was really sort of like bare bones to begin with. And thankfully, like most of the projects I was working on they weren't complex. They were branded digital experiences. So they weren't, they're basic Flash games essentially, or like basic like landing
There we
pages.
go. There we
Yeah.
go. Take
So,
take a drink if you're playing the. Did he mention Flash? Um, I
oh
was actually
yes.
going to ask about that. Was there any Flash involved? Yeah,
Oh, it
of course
was
there
all
was.
Flash all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, it really started there, and then it started to expand. The agency started really getting into more in-depth, like interactive experiences. So diving into like full like sales like experiences that were all built in Flash because it had to be like super cool, not just basic web pages. That was a whole thing.
obviously,
Yeah.
obviously,
And
yeah.
then they started getting into
Please
like
wait while your experience loads.
do the
Yeah.
indefinite like loaders
Mm-hmm.
were a whole thing. Like there was always discussions on like, do we have a percentage loader? Do we have an indefinite loader? How is it going to look like? Where's it going to
Yeah.
fall down? If it's halfway done, is it actually halfway done, or is it going to hang at 80%? Like,
Yeah.
the good old
Which
days.
is why you always fall back to the indefinite loader. It's
Oh
like
yeah,
we can't calculate it really. So
yeah. It's
yeah,
50% done.
yeah, right. Always.
Um, yeah, that's really
Yeah.
where I started to cut my teeth, and then from there, as I started to like learn what was happening, kind of how to do this, kind of get those technical chops, started building out like guidelines for like, hey, if there we need like a login screen, here's the basic building blocks of that, and here's like we're gonna have like consistency across the different projects that we're going to do as like a good starting point. So started to build out that library, and it started to evolve from there. Yeah, then kind of your question and your thoughts around like mentorship. Like I didn't like there wasn't anyone local to do that, so really I
Yeah.
got my mentorship from just reading a bunch of books and looking at blogs and
Blogs.
going to IXDA and stuff like that. Like trying to connect with the community and just do a bunch of reading. Get a whole shelf of books as most people do, and that's really where I got like my crash course in how to do the job.
I just wanted to point out that it's also acceptable to say view source, copy, paste. I mean, that makes sense too.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
that's how I got my start. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know how that works. Now I do.
Yeah. That's I've been redoing my website because I'm on the job hunt. Got to make it fresh, and so
Yeah,
that like I have a whole other desktop set up. Just like here's a website, here's source. Let's start tweaking and see what happens.
that's good. So that's how it began. How are things different now? Like, and you can touch on the tools and stuff, and that's fine. But like, where you started wading in for what you thought the company needed versus like what you know now, like, would you start with wireframes? Where do you think you would get stuck
Ooh,
in based on what you know now?
yeah.
Or maybe what you're interested in now. Like,
Oh
maybe
yeah.
that's changed too.
I think the interest there's similarities in the interest for sure. I think Jason from 20 years ago is in the things that I like are actually similar, maybe a little bit more evolved. I think the way that I go about it very very different.
Mm, yeah.
I honestly don't know the last time I did wireframes. Like it's been probably a decade, but yeah, I really like to start out with just defining what the problem is. I spent a number of years at Amazon that like it really got drilled into me there of like write a document, just write out what you're trying to do or what you want to do or where you think like what you think that solution is. Start from the beginning, keep it simple, and just write out your thoughts. Really, what I found was going through that practice, that exercise,
Mm-hmm.
not only saved me a lot of time, but it also helped me think through what that whole thing was and where
Right.
my gaps in knowledge were. Really helped me challenge and identify what my assumptions were. And in really clear form, really helped sharpen that thinking. So then once I got to a point where I felt like, hey, this document feels really solid, even though I haven't solved the problem, I now have a fantastic place to start from. And
Right.
I have some assumptions that I can go test. I have some ideas I can go take to other people to validate and bounce off the wall, whatever it is. So it really starts with just writing and just thinking out loud, essentially, what's
Mm-hmm.
kind of bouncing around in my head, what I know and what I don't know, and just capturing it. And then from
Yeah.
there, just evolving, just iterating, evolving, and eventually, I might get to wireframes, might get to flowcharts. Who knows where it goes from there?
Functional decomposition diagram. Like, who doesn't love those?
Yeah, who
Um,
knows?
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that about writing it out and saying it out loud or thinking out loud. I think one of my favorite things to do, and this is not unique or groundbreaking at all, and lots of people do it, but especially like in conversations with like a stakeholder or something who says, "Hey, I want X," and getting to like, well, why do you want that? Talk me through that. Say it out loud. I need you to say it out loud because I'm kind of hoping you'll hear how dumb it is yourself. Like,
Yeah.
or maybe not dumb, but like maybe it's not a now thing. It's a we'll get to that later once we build a better foundation first. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so funny how the number of designers I've worked with who whether it's a document that describes what the project is, or they get a 10-minute download from a product manager, jumping right into wireframes because they've got a design system they can rely upon. And it's just like, well, I'm just moving rectangles around, so let's just go.
Mhm.
And here I am, like, kind of like you, like, typing things out. What do I want this to be? What do
Mhm.
I know? What do I not know?
Yeah.
What do I not know that I don't know?
Unknown
Something
unknowns
like
or known
unknown
unknowns.
unknowns. Yeah,
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 yeah, that whole framework. Yeah.
yeah.
I think it also like starting there also helps think about challenge what your frame is on the project. Like what is the breadth of your thinking? And then
Mm-hmm.
then this also kind of comes with like years of experience and seniority, like within your role and stuff like that. On like how like what is your perspective on like the problems you're trying to solve? Is it something very specific, like feature level, or is it something really big and broad, like whole product level, organizational level, whatever it is? Um, as you write out the challenge that you're trying to solve, that problem, you can really start to uncover like, okay, here's actually the scope of what I'm thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
Can I start to challenge that or expand that into a broader scope, or does this fit within a larger system that exists already? So it starts to, I think it really starts to kind of grease the wheels of looking at things from an architectural level, and not just from like a pixel on a screen level. You're understanding that larger holistic, the keyword like experience,
Yeah.
and not just like, okay, go make a feature that does X and just pumping out features. You begin like you take that step back and challenge what is that larger overall picture, and then you can design a much better like solution.
Technical term.
Yeah, a much more better.
Yeah, it's I was reminded of like this had to have been in high school. Yeah, it had to have been in high school. But one of the teachers used the term or the phrase, "A picture's worth 1,000 words," and I just remember raising my hand, going, "How do you know everyone's using the same 1,000 words?" And that's kind of why I mean that, and also my writing background, but I mean, that's why I'd rather either be talking about things than getting on a shared infinite canvas and drawing things or writing things down, whether it's a conversation via Slack or just my own document, whatever. And starting with describing what the thing is that I'm trying to accomplish. Because if I can't explain it, I mean, I'll give some space for, hey, we just need to move this button from the right side to the left side. Just move the button. But yeah, as you were saying, like if you get more complex, if you get more start to bring in organizational impact or larger impact or new customers that you don't really know very well, like jumping right into design is jumping right into guessing.
Yeah. And then when you get in those rooms with stakeholders or senior leaders, and they start to ask, well, did you design it this way? If you just don't jump in and are blindly designing something, you're gonna have to bullshit really well.
Yeah.
Uh, or if you do that work up front, like you're armed and ready for those questions because you are designing for something you have clearly thought through, and
Yeah.
that then when you answer those questions, those leaders, that's going to make you a much better designer, I think, much better professional.
Right. And build trust faster because you can explain yourself more clearly and succinctly.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And I've seen the why did you design it that way get answered in a way that answers the question but the wrong way, which is, something like, well, we went with a drop down instead of showing all the options because there's 15 options, we didn't have room. It's like, well, that's an answer to why did you design it that way, but it's not germane to where I'm coming from, certainly as a stakeholder on the business side or something like that. Maybe if it's an engineer who's like going, hey, why did you design it that way? Sure, maybe you can have a conversation about widgets on the screen, but
Yeah.
not that they don't care about broader issues sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
It's like, why are there 15 things on the screen?
Right. Yeah.
Technical limitations.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We can't do that. Why can't you do that? I don't know. I just don't want to.
That is an answer.
That is an answer.
Might not
Is it
end up so well for you.
acceptable? No. Do they get away with it? Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, it's great. It happens.
So, hey, speaking of unknown unknowns, tell me more.
Tell you more. Yeah, I think I know that there's that framework around like known knowns, known unknowns, unknown unknowns. There's like a whole four
There's
quadrant thing,
four.
but
Yeah.
um,
That's the Eisenhower matrix or whatever it is.
yeah, something
I
like
don't know.
that. There was. I've been reading this book called The Mountain and the Sea. It's a sci-fi book, but in it there was this quote from this French philosopher. I think he's also called like a cultural theorist or something like that. Paul Virilio, I think. Let me just double check that name. I think that's right. Yeah, Paul Virilio. And in it, part of the quote is when you invent ships, you invent the shipwreck. When you invent planes, you invent the plane wreck. So the whole, so like sort of that underlying idea is that when you make a new technology, you also invent the negative aspect of that technology. And so I think that is it's really fascinating from like a not just from like a technologist like point of view, but also from like a design and a product point of view too. Because whenever you make a thing, there's so many unintended consequences or unintended interactions, uses for that thing that come along with it that you probably didn't think about or didn't think about until some bad actor started using it that way or a bot started using it and you're like, oh shit, what happened here? Like an example kind of comes to mind on like, let's say like LinkedIn or Twitter, like when you like something and this happens to me a lot of like you're scrolling through it and you accidentally hit like on something like, oh shit, I don't want to like that. Like that was a user error, but at the same time, like is that person now getting like a notification that, hey, Jason liked this thing, even though like I immediately unliked it. And now also in my mind's eye, it's like, oh shit, now am I going to get all sorts of like targeted ads for something I actually don't want to support or something? Are there those unintended consequences there? But if you take that like a step further, these are kind of like low stakes sorts of things, but if you kind of take that a step further and like, what if you start spamming that like button? Is that person going to get a bunch of notifications like liked, unliked, liked, unliked? Is your account going to get flagged for something? Is this something that people who are like stalking someone else like
Get attention
yeah,
or
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Or like, does this get into like bot territory too? And like, is a bot going in and like just liking something 1,000 times per minute or whatever? So even that seemingly innocuous feature on I can like this person's post can have all sorts of unintended consequences that probably were talked about in some capacity when it was launched, but didn't really
Maybe.
yeah, maybe like didn't actually like get addressed or that interaction was seen until someone started doing it. So it kind of that like you can start to expand that sort of thinking on like when voice assistants first started coming out, people were like, oh hey, this is super cool technology, but then all of a sudden it's like, is this eavesdropping on all my conversations? And there's some proof out there that's saying like, yes they are, and other people saying no they're not, and it becomes a whole privacy issue. So even though there is this march of innovation, which full disclosure I love to do, there is also at the same time like what are you putting out in the world that like you're inventing something by accident? Yes, you're making something new, you're putting out new features, new technology, whatever it is, but you're also inventing unintended inventions, unintended interactions. And so I think it's really important for us as like designers, as technologists, people living and working within this tech world to think about like try and put at least a little bit of brain power behind as we're coming up with this, since we're making these things. Like what happens
Right.
what happens if we put a like button on everything? Let's follow that logic and see what happens before we put it out there and see what happens.
Right. And then there's, I mean, the other thing I thought of is, Twitter. I don't remember when they made this change, but for a long time, the like button was a fave, and it was a star and not a heart.
Yeah, I remember those days.
And they switched from the star to the heart, and it made me so mad because, like, I'm not liking it necessarily. I'm faving it or sometimes sort of bookmarking it because it's got a link on it. I want to come back to it later. And so there's like a different interaction model with that. But, I'm not going to win this argument, obviously, by this point. But, and again, this kind of goes back to a lot of times I'll have conversations with like clients, or if I'm internal, um, like, have you thought about how people are going to feel about this change? Like, what are they actually trying to do? And
You're in good
it's,
company because I use for the longest time I used the heart or the like as a way to bookmark things, and then one day I
Mhm.
realized, oh wait, there's a bookmark feature, so I'll just bookmark all
Oh
the stuff I
yeah,
want to come back
exactly. I
to.
did not even, I didn't even know. I mean, I knew, but I didn't know about the bookmark feature forever. And I saw it one day. I was like, hang on.
Yeah, it's right there, right in
But
plain sight.
yeah. I'm gonna chalk it up to I don't have anything. I
Could
got
be
nothing. I'm
could
not.
could be some persuasive design, like it's all the way on the left. It's that first thing you see. You're like, okay, yeah, right there, just hit it.
Yep.
It's a little bit
It's
buried in
where
that
the
little
star used
row.
to be.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. Who knows?
It's I think one of the things that I'm fully on board with your perspective on this. I want to know, like, times when you've had these conversations with people, either other designers or people cross functionally, what kind of resistance or level of interest do you find?
Ooh,
And
um,
it's a little bit of a loaded question, but
yeah. I think I'll go with the standard designer answer. It depends. Um,
okay, good. All right, show's over, everybody.
Yep,
Good night.
cut and print. Now, I think it depends on a few different factors. I think it depends on the scope and the impact of what those negative aspects are. So, like in that low stakes sort of like if I accidentally hit the like button, what's going to happen? Is that going to reflect on me? Am I going to get served a bunch of stuff I don't want? Um, those are certain things to take into consideration on the overall experience, but also on the product and the metrics and things like that. You do have to start going down those paths of what does this mean for how we measure success? What does this mean
Mm,
for how we measure the goodness of the experience? Are we going to impact CSAT scores, or NPS, or whatever it is that's being used? Are there going to be a bunch of weird feedback coming back that we're going to start to see from this? Could even get, depending on what it is, could get into like legal waters and stuff like that. Who knows? So it really depends on what the breadth and the depth of that potential impact could be. So that's why I think, like, when you at the very very start, starting to come full circle on this, when you start to think through all the problems, you can start to identify what those things are. You might not
mm,
know what the breadth and the depth of those negative impacts would be up front, but at least you can start to identify what they are, and you can then work with your product partners, your data partners, your leadership to figure out which ones are things we absolutely have to address up front, which ones can we know about and kind of put off to the side for now, so that you can start to create that list of priorities to go after. Essentially, it's not just about the golden path; it's also about the edge cases, and those a lot of those negative impacts fall within those edge cases because, at least hopefully, the majority of people aren't using your feature for negative consequences. Hopefully, they're using it for positive consequences.
yeah, it's the loaded question comment is I found a strange, what I feel is strange, amount of resistance to considering how someone might use it unintentionally or intentionally the wrong way, and also how they might feel about that. This focus on, that there's one best path that everybody's going to go through this, or one best outcome that we want to achieve. And I think I've spent a lot of time thinking in terms of like risk mitigation, both risk for the company, client, and risk for whoever is the end user of the product and service in question. And there just isn't a broad interest in exploring those risks. Like, to some extent, it almost feels like, oh, well, this is kind of slowing things down if we get into this. And yeah, I don't know. I've always found it kind of strange that people don't want to, like, talk about that. Even if it's just, an hour of let's poke holes in this really good idea.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. There's probably a whole lot of reasons for that. I guess
Yeah,
my cynical
I
side.
know. It's like we're in a hurry.
Yeah,
It's all this, it's all that. It's like I understand that those reasons are real and feel important at the time. But it's kind of like I've said before, like, it's kind of like saying, we'll do the accessibility stuff later.
yeah. Yeah. That's always V2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. No, and it's like, oh, we joke sometimes about fixing it in post, and people in the movie industry can fix things in post. People in tech never seem to fix things in post unless it's a critical bug.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is I want a bit more move slow and mend things rather than move fast and break things.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. Maybe Monday is move fast and break things, and then Tuesday is move slow.
Friday at 3 o'clock
Friday,
is
yeah,
when we move slow.
exactly.
um, I don't know. Like, part of me wonders if it's related to just our, and I'm going to get really broad, probably way out of my depth here. Just like we live in a capitalist society. So like,
Yes.
it's all about making money. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, so mitigating risk doesn't necessarily line up with that. It just means you're taking less risk. So you're going the safe path, but people don't want to
Yeah.
necessarily take the safe path all the time when it comes to making money. They want to make as much as they possibly can. And so it costs a lot of time, which equals money in the business world, to mitigate risk and think about these things. And it doesn't necessarily line up with moving the needle. It's
Right.
because
Yeah.
you're not increasing lead flow. You're protecting yourself, or reducing the risk that something bad's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
There's I'm reminded of this like framework or model of thinking that I once saw on the Google Conversational Design Guidelines way back in the day. I think they've removed it since then, but basically what it said was that 80% of your users will only use 20% of your design, and then 20% of the users will use 80%. So like that 80% of your design are all edge
Mm-hmm.
cases, whereas that 20% is just that golden path, essentially. So you're spending more of your time figuring out what makes a robust design, a robust experience, rather than focusing on what is that thing that gets person from point A to point B as best as possible, depending on the business need, the user need, the tech need. And you're spending all of your time figuring out all the other problems. And I think that's where risk mitigation starts to fall in, is that what are those other problems?
Mm-hmm.
And it's more like a lower priority, because
Yeah.
everyone wants like that golden path that like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. A person's going to come in and it's going to be so easy to use, when a lot of the time, like, a good experience is what is defined by, at least in my mind, a good experience is defined like what do you do? Like, what happens when a person kind of hits the edge? Like it starts to hit those edge cases when tech fails, or they have something that isn't, like, a situation that isn't normal, I suppose, more unique for their context. How does your design, how does your technology handle that? That's where an experience can either be really, really good and help them, or just kind of fall flat and you're
Yeah.
like, hey, sorry, you've got to call customer service.
Yeah. I got a letter the other day from the IRS, and it said, "Hey, pay your taxes." And I'm like, I paid this, didn't I? I did, didn't I? Wait a second. And I didn't, and it's fine because I had an extension anyway. But I logged in, and they said, "Oh, we have a new system for logging in. You have to set up a new ID." And part of the flow is you had to use your webcam and put your face inside the circle,
Mm-hmm.
and then it gave you photosensitivity warning, and the screen's like flashing and turning different colors, and it's trying to scan your face. It wouldn't work. I tried 6 or 7 times. I got super frustrated, closed everything out, and I went up along with my day, and somehow my ADHD brain goes, job done.
I did that.
I Yeah, I went to the IRS website. I logged in, probably. Not that I consciously thought that, but like what I thought was I did IRS stuff. Done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, a couple weeks later they're like, "Hey, where's our money?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, sorry." And that's probably not the case that was designed for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I have, to pay. Yeah, I think because it was filed, I did start accruing interest, so I owe like an extra $19 now.
Ooh.
So it's like,
Ooh, $19. Yeah. At least it's not more than
and
that.
I still have to go through and figure out like how to get past that.
Yeah. I think
whatever it is
I,
it's doing.
I feel like there's probably a thousand like examples of stuff like that coming from like government websites and experiences. Like when you see a good experience that comes from like the DMV or something like that, like it is amazing. You're like, what? How did they actually make this happen? Like they actually put money behind this and people who know what they're doing or whatever. But I think it does provide a lot of like good use cases for sort of like this line of thinking of like, well, good experiences and delight, however you want to define that, comes like really starts to come from what happens when something doesn't go right. When things go wrong, what happens? Is it built to adjust for that? Is like can you still get someone from point A to point B, even if they have to take 12 other turns to get there? That's great. They're still accomplishing the goal.
2 weeks pass.
Yeah.
Or whatever, right?
Yeah. Are you putting more work on the user just to get logged in? It should be something really simple.
Right.
Or are you helping them out? Like, are you giving them an out? Are you giving them some other way to get through that? Yeah. I think I don't know. That's just one of my weird thoughts on like, hey, you should like design isn't just about like the main, like that golden path. It's about that other 80% of those edge cases. That's really where a lot of that delight, that design really starts to come into play.
Well said.
Great. Cut and dry.
I vote for you.
I'm not
just because it's an election year.
Well, you're probably the only person. So.
All right. So now it's the rapid fire time. It's not really rapid fire.
Lightning round.
It's not lightning round. Yeah. Anything that goes fast, unless it's a motorcycle, it's not my speed. I don't go fast. So I do have the 7 plus or minus 2 questions because it makes me laugh. Instead of 3 questions. So what's one thing you would change about your profession? Like if you were in charge, what would you change?
Man, you want a short answer? So my profession in design or like my career, is it want to change the design industry?
However you want to slice it.
All right.
Keep this bit designy, UX-y in that area.
One thing I'd want to change, I think I would want to, man, I have 1,000 thoughts now and they all don't want to spill out. You really stumped me on this one. Well done. I feel like you should take a drink for this.
Yeah.
One thing that I have experienced, and I don't know if others have experienced this as well, since I kind of live in this gray area between engineer and like design world and all that stuff, is once you have that label of designer, you're always a designer in people's minds. Like once you're design, it is so hard to break away from that, even if you have the skills and the talents to do something else. If there is design attached to in some way, that is what people think of you as. So I think that's one thing that I would change about the profession is, it doesn't. You can have that title, but that doesn't define you as a professional.
I like that one. That's a good one.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Glad I pulled through on that.
Well, I was talking with someone a couple weeks ago, and they were saying like, how do you present yourself? We were talking about my website, and I was like, I don't know. It's really hard for me to explain what I do. And she goes, yeah, it is kind of weird because like you get involved with like organizational design, process, screen stuff, research, and to me it's all design stuff. But if someone looks at me and says designer, then it's like, this is all I do.
Make it look pretty.
But that's not all I do.
Yeah.
No, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So question number 2, what's one thing you wish more people cared about? And I hate to do this to you, but 0 constraints on how you contextualize this answer.
Oh my, let's keep it family friendly, I guess. No, I don't know.
You do whatever you want to do. If you want to give the family friendly one and then the
spicy
anti-family,
one? I guess.
No, the spicy one. Okay, yeah,
spicy family. Something more people cared about. Ooh, okay. Something. So usually when I mentor folks, they like something I always talk about is how are you measuring things? How are you measuring success? So I think especially from like a junior designer perspective, or even it doesn't even have to be designer, like someone who is in a professional career, like understanding how the thing you're making is being measured so that you can make it better. You can understand how well it's working. It was one of the things that just was like a thorn in my side when I was at an agency because they don't measure anything. I was like, hey, make this thing, ship it off to the client, wipe your hands, move on to the next thing. So you had no idea like how many people are using this thing, how well it's actually working. So I would say, to put a little bow on this, I wish more people cared about understanding how well the thing is working. Not just
Okay.
making a thing and pushing it off.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I think I've come sort of full circle on it because like when I started, one of the things that we were required to do is write usability objectives. So, a user must complete this flow under 2 minutes with zero errors. And then you could test the extent to which you met that. And I was like, at first I was like, can they use it? What's an error? And that's actually a good conversation to have. What's an error? But I was just like, can't we just make it and it works? This is like very early in my career. And now I'm back to being there. I'm like, yeah, I get it now. It's like, because how do you know? And also, like, well, maybe we could get it under 1 minute. It's like, okay, what's it going to cost us to do that? Do we want to do that? No. 2 minutes is great.
Also, like,
Or, yeah, we
why
need
one
to
minute?
because of X, Y, and Z. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
this a
because
life or death situation?
that's the thing, is like, it always felt arbitrary. Because I was like, well, how fast should it be?
Yeah.
Fast.
Yeah.
30 seconds. Oh, that's too fast. Wait, what?
Yeah.
But at least something to baseline it, to understand like the extent to which you can / should improve.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like that one. All right, number 3, what accomplishment are you most proud of that you weren't paid for doing?
Wow. That little caveat there at the end. Wasn't paid for doing. The design world? I don't know. Personally, it would have to be recording an album is something that I'm really proud of. Not too many people
What?
do that. Yeah. This little guy back here. Recorded back in a different life when I was in a band. We played together for a bazillion different years and went on tours, recorded an album, and then 6 months later we broke up. Partially because like we were all old-ish, and then people started moving away to different cities. But yeah, I think personally that's definitely one of my like things that I'm like really proud of. I think like from the design world, something I haven't been paid for. I don't know.
Before we move, I mean, the band one's fine, but before we move on from that, like, where can our listeners listen to your album? Buy your album? Is it out there?
Yeah, it is out there. It is available on Spotify. It is The Answer Team. It's also on Bandcamp. It's also on my website, jasonbejot.com. You can listen to it on Spotify, on my website. Starting to get different levels of meta there. But yeah, it's available out there. Just search for The Answer Team and you'll find it.
Today's episode sponsored by The Answer Team. Sure. Okay. So next question: no salsa, mild salsa, or spicy salsa?
Ooh. If I'm just eating anything by myself, spicy. If I'm my partner doesn't necessarily like spicy salsas, so it's usually mild, but it has to have salsa on it. No, the salsa is not an option.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, there's a company here in Portland, Zuniga's, and they have Hotter.
Ooh, okay.
And it comes with a jalapeno in it that you can chop up and mix in if you want, or just take it out. And so,
just
and,
like
and
a
they're
pile
hot.
of jalapeno
I
seeds.
call it mild, but
yeah,
right. Just like what's your favorite place on Earth?
Oh,
see, I was nice and I constrained it to just Earth as opposed to like Saturn or something.
Well, I have been off Earth many times now. I really love Los Angeles. Lived there for like almost 5 years, but more specifically, this is going to sound really dumb. I really love Disneyland. Back when we lived in LA, we were there like at least once a month, partially because I got in for free because I worked there. But it's just every time I go back, it feels like home, just that feeling of home. And you're like, yes, like I feel comfortable. I feel like myself, just feel like pieces coming together. So yeah, I'd have to say Disneyland.
What was your job there?
So I didn't work. I worked for Disney, not at the parks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I worked for the Disney Studios as a UX architect, working on all their internal enterprise tools. So things managing like visual effects houses and their like delivery timelines and windowing and their creative affairs development process for like developing stories and like finance and all the different things.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So next one, relative to what first comes to mind when I ask you this question, what do you wish you'd done differently?
Ooh, done differently. My mind instantly went blank.
Okay. All
um,
right. You don't have to answer any of these. It's,
yeah.
7 plus or minus 2. So,
Well, I think just to in the interest of like being like fully authentic. Like I think something I wish I did differently was um, take care of my mental health earlier. Something I didn't do until later in life. I'm 42 now, and it wasn't too long ago that I really started to like understand that, like the importance of it, or
mm-hmm.
even just recognize it. So I wish that was something that I had done much earlier in life,
Yeah.
because
Same.
it affects everything. It affects your entire life, your professional life, your personal life, everything.
Yeah. Big same.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I had started in what would have been 2007, because I left my first job after 7 years in 2006. I immediately went into my second job, like UX related job. And so I all of a sudden had perspective on the last place that was just driving me up the wall of what stuff was the organization's fault, which was a lot, and what stuff, oh, it was me. I
Mm-hmm.
was the problem. And I kind of wish I had. I mean, I'm glad I had the insight, but I kind of wish that I had that follow on thought of, oh, and I should start addressing those things that I'm bringing to the table, and not wait another what 10 years
Mm-hmm.
to start.
Yeah. Um,
9, 10 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel the exact same way. Like I'll be reminiscing about previous projects and being like, oh wait, that was really dumb of me to do. Yeah, I should have gone about
Yeah.
that differently, and here's why, and then
Yeah.
start going down that rabbit hole of, well, it was actually spawned on by something I had done many years before, and blah 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 blah. So yeah, it's really
Yeah.
important to take care of your brain for sure.
Okay. Good. Excellent. Excellent answer. If you could do something else for a living other than what you're doing now, what would it be?
I have two thoughts on this. Just because I feel like I'm super interested in like theoretical physics. I have a bunch of like books about like string theory and quantum gravity and all this other crazy stuff that I find super interesting. Feel like in a different life I would have gone into physics, really
Mm-hmm.
embraced the science side of things, but also like kind of like I grew up on a farm and I really love just like working with my hands and like growing things, like making something. And recently I've been wanting to like be a mushroom farmer.
Oh
As kind
wow.
of random as that sounds, just like start do something completely different than I'm doing now. Yeah. Yeah. Two different answers, two.
Do you have a basement?
No, I don't actually. I don't have a basement. It's one of the things kind of stopping me from exploring that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Is like I don't have a good place to grow things.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I would go back to roasting coffee. It's the like my back couldn't handle it, but because those coffee bags are heavy. But it was one of the most fun jobs that I had.
Probably you probably smell really good too. Like after a day of roasting coffee. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's some people smell it and they're like, "Oh, that smells awful," but when I smell it, it's like just nostalgia.
Oh yeah,
So, it smells good to me. But yeah.
yeah. There was
So,
when like growing up in a farm. It's like this really it's a fairly large like industrial sized farm. There's lots of cows, and cows don't smell good actually.
yeah.
Cows
Yeah.
just yeah. But like that smell of like manure, like it smells like childhood, and like my grandpa would always joke that it smells like money, which I mean, yeah, cows.
Yeah, I get it.
That was a whole business, but yeah, manure smells like money for some reason in my brain. That's just the two are linked.
Yeah, you said that, and I was immediately taken back to when we lived in Illinois, and on my route for the first year we lived out in the country, and on the route I had to go to take to work, we passed a pig farm every day. And especially in the Illinois summer,
Mm-hmm.
super hot. In our car that we got in Alaska, that the dealer was like, "Hey, for $600, we could put a air conditioner in for you,"
Oh
and we're
no.
like, "Air conditioner? What do we need that for? We're in Alaska. Come on."
Mm-hmm.
And then, smash cut to 7 years later, we're in Illinois and with this car, it's just like, so you have to roll with the windows down. And then it's just like, oh
Mm-hmm.
God, it's so,
Especially after like a rain,
Invigorating.
oh yeah, it gets
Oh,
real fragrant.
yeah. Fragrant money. Fragrant money. Yeah. Okay, so last question. Imagine it is a year from now. What do you hope to not be carrying anymore?
Ooh, I love this question. In a year from now, I hope to be carrying less self doubt. I'm gonna be like kind of still following that authentic trend. Uh, I think
Hmm.
something that I recognize in myself, but I think a lot of other people just especially based on like mentoring folks, is like it's really easy to doubt yourself in this profession that feels really competitive, or can. Um,
Mm, yeah.
Especially when you're trying to apply for jobs, but can also be super stressful because there's such high expectations, especially when you work for large companies.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to have that doubt settle in. And so I think a year from now, just having less of that.
Yes, please.
All right.
For all of us.
Yes. Cool.
All right. Well, thank you, Jason. And I'm very glad to have known, like, you and I have known each other for what, 2 years now? I think maybe
Oh, I
two,
think
3 years.
what, maybe a little bit longer actually. We've been maybe
Oh,
3.
that's
I don't
right.
know.
We were just talking about this the other night.
Yeah.
Um,
I think we're probably coming up on 4 or something like that.
yeah, but I didn't know the band
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
the cow thing. I mean,
Yeah.
surprises galore.
Yeah. Sounds like we
So
need to do
I
more of these or
appreciate it.
something.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Join me live tomorrow. No. Anyway, well, let's stop talking.
All right. Cool. Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Thank you so much.